When did survival turn into monetizing every hobby we ever loved? Thank you for joining me here on Volume 6, Work Worth and the Hustle Myth. And today's topic might hit a little too close to home. We're talking about the side hustle, industrial complex. Because for millennials, having just one job has basically been a joke. We grew up in a system where a salary alone rarely covered rent, debt, groceries, healthcare, and maybe just a tiny bit of fun. So we built a culture where grinding nights and weekends was framed as ambition, when really it was survival disguised as entrepreneurship. I mean, I remember being a host at a club on Wednesday nights and Friday nights in Jersey when I was living there. Latin nights. It was fun. It was great. I also built an internet radio station, one of the very first ones that was running back in 2010. We were part of the top 100 websites in the world back when Alexa.com was a thing. We were getting awards. We were paying for music. We had our spin was that we had club DJs playing music in a state-of-the-art studio with cameras, everything. Now every radio studio has this, right? But back then, when I created this with my late brother, it was just, it was fun. It was crazy. We were having DJs from all over the world submit mixes and, that would play 24 hours a day. We had the station on 24 hours a day. But during the day, from 8 a.m. to midnight, we had 2-hour rotations where every 2 hours a new show would start with, guest DJs. We had guests. We had celebrity guests. We had baseball players, wrestlers, everyone. If you name it, we had them there. Shout out to my old co-host, Dina the Queen Buzz, who was on there with me. She had her own celebrity report. She would just talk about all things, pop culture. It was great. It was great. But enough about me. That was my side hustle. That's where I got really introduced into what side hustling was. It was the start of clubzone.fm. What a time to be alive. Anyway, now let's get back into this. I want you guys to think back to the early 2000s, right? Where we were fresh out of college. For you guys, I was a United States Marine. A lot of you were drowning in student debt loans. I know that. Luckily for me, I didn't have to worry about that because I had the VA, the 9/11 bill, which pretty much saved my life. And a lot of us, even after the military, entered a shaky job market, right? Employers were cutting benefits and calling it lean. Wages stalled, but bills definitely didn't. So we got creative. We drove for Uber. We sold on eBay. We took photography gigs on the weekends, freelanced online. That was a big one. We all learned how to Photoshop because we learned through YouTube. We called it a hustle, but underneath the shine, it was really just patching holes on a sinking boat. And here's the thing. Some of it was genuinely empowering, right? For the first time, technology gave us ways to make money outside of a boss's approval, but it also gave companies permission to normalize underpaying employees because, hey, you've got a side hustle, right? The wild thing is side hustling didn't start in adulthood. I think we were already hustling in the 90s. We just didn't have a word for it. Remember lemonade stands in the summer or mowing lawns for $10 a yard? If you lived in the Northeast, you were shoveling snow for the elderly, your neighbors and your friends. Trading Pokemon cards or flipping Pogs, oh my God, Pogs at recess and turning them into business deals. We remember playing dice. No, I certainly did not do that. Babysitting the neighbor's kids because you wanted cash for pizza or the newest Nintendo Genesis Super Nintendo game. See, that was our first taste of hustle culture. We just didn't know it would follow us into adulthood. What was once kid entrepreneur energy became survival tactics in our 20s and our 30s. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. Hobbies stopped being hobbies. If you loved painting, sell it on Etsy. If you loved baking, you started a cake business. If you loved writing, you turned it into a blog, then into sponsored posts. Now, suddenly every passion had a dollar hanging over it, right? A dollar sign. And if you weren't monetizing it, people asked, well, why not? People do it now with podcasting and YouTube. We were taught that free time was wasted time, that rest was laziness, That if you had a skill, you should flip it into profit, and slowly your joy, well, that became labor. Now let's compare. Millennials invented hustle culture out of necessity. We glorified the grind. We wore "I'm so busy" like a badge of honor, even when we were miserable. But let's talk about Gen Z, because Gen Z, they're rejecting it. They'll post TikToks about quiet quitting or go viral for saying, "I don't dream of labor." They're asking for balance first. 4-day work weeks, remote first jobs, and mental health days. Where we build side hustles to survive, they're building boundaries to live. And honestly, that's the shift we needed all along. You see, the hustle came with a price: burnout, anxiety, always feeling behind. And socially, it divided us. If you didn't have a side hustle, you were judged as lazy. If you did, you were exhausted. It was a lose-lose constant loop. Now, companies loved it. The rise of gig work let them outsource labor, avoid benefits, and shift risk onto us. What we called freedom often looked more like exploitation in a new outfit. So what now? How do we push back against the side hustle industrial complex? It starts with remembering that not everything has to make money, right? Some things can exist just because they bring us joy. We're allowed to rest, to create without profit, to enjoy hobbies without pressure. I mean, heck, I'm doing this podcast. I don't get paid for it. I'm doing it for the love of being an old man and wanting to talk about our millennial culture. And yes, sometimes we still need a side gig to survive, even when we have the dreaded 9 to 5. That's real. But the mindset shift is this: we are not our productivity. Our worth isn't tied to how many jobs we juggle. The future definitely isn't about hustling harder. It's about hustling less and living more. So let's bring it all back to the central question. When did survival turn into monetizing every hobby we ever loved? The answer: right when a broken system left us to fend for ourselves, and we made the best of it. But best doesn't always mean healthy. And maybe the bravest thing we can do now is reclaim rest and refuse to turn every joy into a damn business plan. Next up, millennial bosses are different. But are we okay? We're going to talk about what happens when millennials finally land in positions of power, how we lead, how we struggle, and whether we're changing the system or just inheriting its damn flaws. Subscribe, share, check out all the links at alexiscardoza.com. That's where you'll find the YouTube channel and all of the socials, as I mentioned before. Because hustling less, well, that's not lazy. That's reimagined. And this is fine.
Goodbye.